Okay. Were you outgoing as a child?
Ooh. Kind of a combination. I was a total tomboy. I was on stage dancing from the time I was like 2 or 3, like doing, nothing impressive, but, but cute little recitals and stuff like that. So I certainly didn't have stage fright, so I was outgoing in that sense. But I don't think I was ever the kid who
Was running around, driving mom crazy?
Right. I probably did drive her crazy. But I certainly wasn't the kid who, desperately needed a bunch of attention or class clown or anything. I was never that. But it was unique. When I was little, I was fearless. I was a total tomboy. The house next door had a little boy, so he sort of became my best friend by default. He's a little bit older than me, and I don't know if he was fearless, but I certainly was. Climbing trees and, just the story that's kind of infamous in my life is that when I was little, I would jump off of anything. I had no fear of heights. So jump out of trees and all kinds of things. In our house, it was a 1-story house, but it kind of sloped down a hill. So the back of the house was 2 stories. And I would always jump off. I would climb outside of the balcony railing or the railing on our deck and jump down. And I don't actually even remember this very well, but the story goes that twice I did that and dislocated my hips.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, right? Totally smart. But yeah, because I was just fearless. I would jump off of anything, anywhere. Jump off the roof, jump up, I thought it was cool. That is not how I am now. I did not look for extreme sports or anything. But yeah, when I was a little kid, apparently that was my deal.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes no sense. It could, I don't know, that could be describing some sort of insanity that I haven't stumbled on yet.
Wait till your kid's born.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
That'll be it.
Yeah, you'll be paying for that forever. What drew you to dancing?
I lived in a very small town when I was young, and I'm sure that was one of the only things available. I do know that my dad really wanted me to play softball, and I could not have cared less. So I had no interest, which I think broke his heart for a small amount of time. But my mom found this school for this little dance school, and it was girls my own age and whatever that was, like 2 or 3 years old when we started, and it was just a sweet little extracurricular activity, I guess. But I definitely loved it. I loved the glitter, I loved the the shiny curtains and the fancy outfits and all of it. I just fished the water, loved it.
You took when you were a senior in high school, you took a acting workshop that actually made you, or got you the acting bug or whatever. What were your plans before you took that workshop? Like, what did you have in mind when you got your senior year of high school? What were you going to do?
Well, I'd always been a dancer, but to me, that was never even remotely a career consideration because it's very rare that anybody can make a living out of that. Aside from injuries. I remember in high school, I took some sort of class where they had us looking into different careers. And I remember looking into dance, and the average dancer made like $3,000 a year or something. And so I thought, oh, no, that's not for me. That sounds awful. So from a very young age, from probably 7th or 8th grade, my focus had been international business. So I took every business course I could, and not that there's a ton you can take in high school, but certainly I was in every one that you could take, and I completely had that plan. So yeah, that was my focus, and the acting thing was completely, it was a complete fluke. I was, my senior year of high school, I had so many credits that I only had to go to school till about 11 a.m. So I suddenly had all this free time, and not too far from me, the guy that took my senior pictures was, he was a photographer, but also was hosting this acting workshop. It was either the first week of my senior year, or maybe the week before, it's just the tail end of summer. But it was actual casting directors from Los Angeles casting. One of them was the head of casting for ABC sitcoms, and just, really big people. And I was completely green. I've never acted in my life. I am completely sure that I must have been terrible because I didn't know what I was doing. But I was completely intrigued, and I loved it. And weirdly, just out of that workshop, I ended up getting offered 2 separate jobs, which must have been out of potential, not because of my performances at the time. But both of the casting directors who I was working with had roles in mind for somebody that fit my description, and we just got on really well. And it was that moment that kind of opened up my eyes that acting was really a legitimate option for a career. And just because I'd always loved the stage, and And it wasn't an immediate decision, but it certainly planted that seed right then. I wasn't old enough to take the jobs at the time. I was 17, and I needed my parents' permission, and they were not into it at the time. But I really think that helped to motivate me, because they said, see if this is what you really want. And I just dove headfirst into acting. I took classes almost every day of the week and just really got involved with everything that I possibly could. And the more I got involved, the more I loved it. So by the time I graduated, I knew this was what I wanted to do. And I moved to Los Angeles only 2 or 3 days after I graduated high school.
And were your parents supportive of that once you really
At that
decided?
point they were.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were terrified. I'm sure they were scared out of their minds of, LA and the big bad city and what could be awaiting me. But yeah, they were very supportive, which was great.
When you came to LA, were there things about getting your career started that surprised you or caught you off guard?
You could be talking about yesterday. Business does not make any sense. It is such a crazy industry, and I swear the more I know, the less I know. That sort of that saying. Absolutely, everything surprised me. I mean, let's be honest. When I was 17, I had 2 auditions, and they offered me both jobs. So when I came out here at 18, I assumed that there were jobs waiting for me everywhere. I mean, maybe not quite that ridiculous, but I certainly thought. I didn't think I'd be struggling for a decade or anything like that. I mean, I thought, I'm a hard worker, I am focused, I'm training all the time, this is going to work. And, you come out here and you realize, well, first of all, that there's thousands of other people in the exact same situation you are. But more than that, the really big surprise was realizing how much of my competition, the girls that were the same age that I was, but they, I was 17, 18. They were 17, 18, but they had 15 years of experience. They had a resume that went back 15 years. They'd all been acting since they were like 3 and 4 and 5. And that was the big thing that really, really shook my confidence, because just realizing everybody else, they've been on stage, they've been, on these sets for that long. So not only do they have all the skill and the resume to back it up, but just the experience of being on a set, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, sets are a crazy thing. It's like you practically need to know a different language because of all the technical stuff that's happening, and just knowing your place, knowing where you need to be, when you need to be, and just not being nervous on a set. I mean, it's definitely it's a learning. That part is a learning process too. So I think that was probably the biggest surprise. I mean, I'm really lucky because I had a few connections in terms of I had some family that lived out here, so I had that, sort of touchstone of home.
Right.
And, just a few things like that really made the transition far better for me than it is for a lot of people who drive out here and, just sort of fall apart because it's so different. But that's not to say that it was, super easy. It was definitely an adventure, yeah.
What advice would you give someone who wanted to follow in your footsteps? Some young kid who wanted to...
Oh, I get asked this question all the time, and I feel terribly inept and unprepared, because I think the experience is different for everybody. And, I mean, the one piece of advice I try to give everybody is save as much as you possibly can, because Los Angeles is more expensive than almost any place you could move from, particularly in terms of, like the Midwest, which, there's so many people that have that dream, and then what hinders them is they get out here and they were completely unprepared for how expensive it would be, and they end up having to give up on their dream just because financially it was too much to take on. Other than that, though, I think the big advice I give everybody is to just work as much as you possibly can. So many people... Well, I mean, I guess that's the difference between people that want to be actors or people that want to be famous, but I just always tell everyone to do as much theater as you can, just to be educated on what it is you're trying to do. And I think that really sort of, that the cream rises to the top kind of thing. And I think that really happens with actors, because you have the actors that really don't care about the craft, or people that think they want to be actors and they really have to question, do they want to do the work to get where it is they're wanting to go, or are they just, do they just want to be on a dating show?
Well, you did a lot of, you've done some stuff with kids in schools and stuff like that. I mean, do you think that some of these acting classes and some of these drama things that these schools do should teach the kids more about the actual industry instead of just about the acting, to try and educate them?
Absolutely. I mean, granted, like I said, and I mean, like anybody knows in the industry, it's not something easy to predict. I mean, most careers, A plus B equals C. I mean, you sort of have a natural progression. But that doesn't exist in entertainment. I mean, it's about the opportunities that come your way and about the timing and about so many things that you don't have control over. But nonetheless, the more aware, the more educated you can be, the better. So I would think, while some of those answers aren't, while some of those answers are kind of liquid, I also think that it would be great to give as much of that information out as possibly could. I mean, it's terrible, but I've been hired as a speaker for several things like that, and I always have a huge part of my speech or the questions that I answer always have to do with that, because it's the side nobody wants to talk about just because it's not as glamorous or not as exciting, but it's the reality. I mean, if you want to make it, you have to be prepared in some way. You have to have you need to know what you're getting into, the good and the bad, and you have to have a plan that lasts longer than a week,